I was once told that things will get better when I get better. Now, there's so much truth in that statement, but unfortunately, I would later learn that it came out of the mouth of a con man vacating around as something more than what he was, simply a vessel of inauthenticity at all times. Once I had this newfound conclusion, I drew upon another statement that I once heard. Higher rank doesn't equate to a good leader. You see, too many times and too often, I think we all fall victim to our boss's shortcomings. Maybe it's not their fault. Maybe they never sought out to be anyone's leader. They just simply said yes to a promotion and an increase in pay. I mean, who wouldn't do that? But you see, I'm cursed with the pursuit of self-improvement at all times that even I question whether or not I should have referenced the aforementioned boss as a con man. But then again, if the shoe fits, call it a spade. Even so. I've been forced to learn that just because I pursue a better me every day for our shared society, that far too many of our bosses and our political leaders not only don't have those same set of expectations, they also have no clue as to what kind of business they're actually in. And that's the business of people. I've watched people fail at job unbeknownst as to why, simply because their superiors were too afraid of carrying out the tough talks. Or as my guest Dan Faill would say, having the conversations that matter. So with our nation once again being called upon to make a choice at the voting booth in this year's midterms, ask yourself these three things. Does the person you're voting for carry the intangibles as a leader that you deem to have merit, like accountability or empathy? Are they authentic in their approach? And are they capable of having the conversations that matter? Because make no mistakes about it, it's their damn job to. Bobby Talks. Always more to the story. Welcome, everybody, to Bobby Talks. ... Those dots are there to tell you that there's always more to the story. And today's story is higher rank does not equate to a leader. And I'm sitting here with the man, Dan Faill. He is a keynote speaker, professional speaker, and consultant, motivational speaker. He's a coach. He doesn't like to broadcast that, but it's there on his website at danfaill.com. This guy is somebody who's been, I think you said motivational speaking now for going on, what, 14, 15 years?
Yeah, about that, yeah.
Dan, man, it is my privilege. I'm so glad and honored to have you on the show today. We're going to be talking a lot about leadership. So how are you doing, man?
Overall, pretty good. You know, can't complain. It's only 5 o'clock out here on the left coast. So just had a full day and now get to end it chatting with you. So I'm excited.
See, normally at 5, I'm taking my nap, and you're getting ready to start a podcast. So good for you, man. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, you know, I will say caffeine has been involved today.
Sure. What you said you're on the left coast. What part of the left coast are you part of?
I live in Los Angeles.
Oh man, I lived out there for about 6 months. Loved it. Hated the traffic. So,
You know, what's funny is that people are like, "How do you love LA?" And I'm like, number one, you pay for the weather.
exactly.
Hands down, you pay for the weather. Number two, every stereotype about the traffic is 100% accurate. My
Sure.
favorite is the speed limit sign that's like 65, but I can barely creep over 20 because it's 12 lanes bumper to bumper. Yeah, I feel you on all that. But I've
Side
lived out here
story.
for almost half my life.
Well, the thing is that I lived in Burbank, and so you had to get across. I forget the name of the highway. You would know to get into LA right there. Because I was working at E Entertainment Television, and I was working on Wilshire Boulevard right there.
Yep.
Probably a 10-minute drive without cars turns into an hour and 15 in the morning. If you timed it up right on your way home, if you kind of you could get home a lot faster than that. But I just remember leaving. You had 1 mile on your way home to get over 6 lanes of traffic to get to the off ramp to get it so that you can get home. If not, you're going to go a mile down and it's going to take you another 20, 30 minutes to get back to where you wanted to be.
Easily, 100%. Yep. And especially if you're not in a carpool, then there's no way to even try to navigate the like, well, I can't cut out an extra 30 seconds. By
Exactly.
I feel you.
Yeah. So Dan, I've been wanting to do this show for a while now. And it's just this idea that for whatever reason in my 35 years of life, and I don't know about you in 42, but you've been doing kind of your own entrepreneurship here for a while. So you've kind of been your own boss, your own leader.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a reason for that, but I can just tell you before we get into like the big head of the, of authority, like politicians and things of that nature, because I really want to talk to you about Gavin Newsom and just your perspective and thoughts on him. But I just think about my 35 years of life, and I think about the amount of bosses that I've had in different jobs, especially in education. So I've taught in education the last 8 years, and I've had a lot of different administration come in, all with, new ideas of their own, new agendas, ways that they think they can get it better. And sometimes, unfortunately, maybe more times than not, I've found people that don't really care. I've come across some really, for lack of a better word, shitty bosses. I've had some okay bosses, and then I've had bosses that think they're killing it, but always shy away from like the conversations that matter. And I've only really had probably maybe 2 or 3 really good bosses in my lifetime. Do you think that's a fair sample size for most people, or am I just having a bad experience?
I don't know. I would say that you are on par with a majority of people in the world, right? Not even just America, but in the world. And because there's an adage that people don't leave, jobs, they leave bosses, right? Like people don't leave their positions because they could be happy with their employees. Like I have left 2 different jobs that I loved who I worked with. I loved my colleagues so much. Had an okay boss in one of them, had a boss that I really didn't see eye to eye with on another one. I only lasted a year. Part of that was a cubicle sucked my soul to live a little bit. And so I had that like coming into, so my mindset was not perfect in that point. But I think, having worked for myself for the last 6 years and really in five weeks ago started another full-time job, seeing that shift of 2 bosses. So I report directly to the COO, but I'm on a weekly call with the CEO, and they check in. I mean, they've checked in weekly. Hey, how's everything going? What do you need on our end? What are the systems that we need to fix? And out of a genuine care and concern, whereas that hasn't happened all the time. So I think that I think a lot of it depends on the people that we work with. I think we can do our jobs. We were hired to do them. So I think we're good at whatever that task might be. But that supervision, it really is make or break, and I've lost, when I supervised people in a prior position, lost one within 6 months. They had one foot out the door when I started, but at the same time, like it doesn't feel good to be a boss that you think that you're doing okay. And then it's like deuces. And I used to ask, what am I not doing well? What am I doing well? What should I improve upon? Right. And because it's hard feedback to take, but damn it, that's probably some of the most important feedback, is to know what you're doing well from your employees or your supervisees' point of view, but to actually listen with the intent of you might not like what you hear, and to not get defensive or excuse away whatever they're saying.
Yeah, if we were to take that down and just like dissect it down to just like the individual level, forget the ranks there, forget boss, employee, right? You should be asking questions. If your boss isn't or telling you what you need to be working on, or even complimenting you at times too, because that's crucial as well. You should be, hey, am I doing everything correct? Because I kind of fell into a trap for a while where like, okay, I'm not hearing anything, so I must be doing my job well. And I had an ugly exit from a job that I worked at for 6 years, one that I loved, because I was my 8th boss in 6 years. And I had kind of been like, you know what? I've been here longer than you. I didn't have that attitude about me. I was very much a team player, and very much, I took on a lot of jobs. I was doing more probably than I should. And I felt at the time that I had, communicated that effectively. Like, look, I kind of need some help with some of these things.
Yeah.
The problem is that, a lot of times if you're not asking questions and you're not hearing from anybody, you just assume that you're doing a good job, but that's not always the case. Yeah. And at the end of this run with that particular place, I got it thrown on me like a couple things, like, you should be doing this better, you should be doing that better. And I kind of came back defensive, where I was like, where have you been telling me this because I've been doing this particular job now for X amount of years. You understand?
Well,
So
and if you're only doing feedback loops once a year, and sometimes it's not a loop, right? Usually it's shit rolls downhill, and that's where you get the negative feedback or positive, but
I
it's
like
once a
that.
year. And so like if you're only doing it then, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
And that's something that when I worked in one position, and I was only there for 2 years, but I remember when I got hired, my boss at the time was like, whatever you do, don't lose your administrative assistant. Like, she is a saint. She has been here. She's been in all these different jobs. We need to keep her. And he was like part-time of part-time, right? I only had her 8 a.m. to noon, only 9 months out of the year. And I had never met her when I started. And so
Sure.
my first day, I was like, hi, Miss Margie. My name's Dan. I'm your new boss. And she told me at the end, she retired. Actually, she came out of retirement and then re-retired. But at the end of that year, she stuck around an extra year. And so when I was out the door, when she was out the door, she was like, of all my years, you're one of the best supervisors I've ever had. And if there's something from a 70-year-old woman coming out and just saying like, you're one of the best bosses, and she's done textile work, she's done admin work, and just knowing that's a good feeling. She was like, you made it enjoyable to come into the office. I might not have been the best damn boss, and I will acknowledge that all day. But damn it if I didn't want a good team feeling. Did we all get along? Not all the time. Did shit roll downhill? Yep, this is what came to me. Now I've got it to you, and this is where we're at. But like, I wanted people to feel comfortable to voice their opinions, even if they were significantly different than mine, because that is in and of itself how you create a team.
Yeah.
But then also it's an exercise in vulnerability,
Empowering them. Yeah.
100%. And so finding ways, and that's, you alluded to it, but like one of my catchphrases is creating the conversations that matter.
Yeah.
Because I think too often we skate by conversations all day. It's like, oh, hey, Bob, what's up? And you're like, oh, I'm fine. Okay, I didn't ask how you were. I said, what's up? Right. So because we're so ingrained in the like, this is my day and this is my whatever. And we don't really open ourselves up to peopling. And so I like to, in the topics that I talk about, take uncomfortable conversations and make them relatable, tangible, give some action items. But in a work environment, either the boss is like, this is the way it has to be, period, done. And if you're not open to feedback, then you're not going to grow as an organization.
Right.
Like, I think the most nimble organization, maybe the most successful organizations are also more nimble because they're open to that feedback. And so like looking at Amazon when they first started was like, we're just going to sell books because books don't go bad on a shelf, right? Like that's it.
Yeah.
And now like looking at their growth, like it's all come from easy to read 1-page memos of like, hey, what if we did like a buy it now? What if we did a people who bought this also bought this? Because everything came back from what makes the consumer's process easier. Say what you will about Bezos, but Amazon as a company has taken that philosophy and really like implemented a bring an idea forward. No idea is a bad idea, but let's make it only easier about the consumer, not about profits.
And I feel like far too often the people that, get the praise, like that are, these big figures in our life that are successful leaders you talk about, they kind of create some of the most friendliest environments as far as workplace goes. They are asking even the bottom person on a totem pole for ideas because that's what got them to where they are. How's come this isn't emulated more at basic jobs? It's funny how power corrupts even at the smallest towns. Yeah. And a lot of times, just because, I talked earlier in the intro about like higher rank doesn't equate to a leader. Maybe because there's money there, they have no interest in being a leader. They just want the money. But man, I just feel like we're falling short of what could be a great work environment. And for that boss, they would make their life a hell of a lot easier if they just realize that this is a people business rather than just a business.
But the problem is that shareholders, stakeholders, sales reports, right? Like that has been the determining factor of success for far too long. And so again, the companies that take risks, are you really willing to take a $100,000, million, $100 million, $1 billion risk, right? Like, are you willing to go that far? I mean, not to go in too much into politics, social justice, but like look at Adidas and Ye, like that is a whole thing that Adidas dropped him 2 weeks after he made anti-Semitic comments.
Yeah.
So like that wasn't about we stand, with our Jewish brothers and sisters. That wasn't about that. That was, oh crap, look at how our stock tanked because people are holding us / him accountable. We need to make that separation too. And so that was a profit-driven decision that 2 weeks after the fact of statements being made of like, I can say this and they ain't gonna do nothing. Well, finally they did something. But like, look at how that occurs. And so like we, the consumer, have more abilities to control the market than we think. But the companies have provided us, right? Like marketing ads, everything says this is what you need to be successful. Well, who defines success? We've let companies, corporations, whatever define success, but really we should own what success looks like for us, because then that's our metric. Am I happy in my job? Am I successful in my job? What does that mean? What does it look like? Am I happy living in LA? I'm not happy paying as much as I do in rent, but I do like the weather. So it's a trade-off, right? So like, Am I successful? Could I move to the Midwest and own a house? Yes. Am I okay with renting now? Yes. Right? Like, and so, because I'm going to have to call a landlord to fix the sink. That's something I ain't got to do. So like, and you don't want me to fix the sink. Trust me. So I think looking at how we define success, companies specifically, to bring it back, companies are a little scared to fail in that regards, because that means that they're taking a risk, and risk doesn't equal profits for their measures of success.
Right. Like I said, I come from the world of, I've done education. I've also done retail. I've done some other things as well along the way. I've done radio. I've done TV, things of that nature. And again, I go back to this idea that it's like, I don't care if you're, in the corporate world or if you're in the education world or wherever you might be. This is a people business.
Yeah,
and
100%.
And I feel like the more that you can wrap your head around the idea that, like, if the person I'm employing, maybe he's in charge or she's in charge of 2 or 3 people, if they're kind of doing the same thing, making sure that they're taking care of, checking in, supervision with, accountability on their own end, what can I do to be better? Too often, I just haven't seen this. And you talked about that, your administrative assistant, 70 years of age, who says you're the best boss she's had in 70 years. That's criminal in a sense, because, and in a sense, just because she shouldn't have ever got that long. She did come from a different age or different time, but at the same time, think about that, Dan. I mean, you've kind of given her last taste of the working world. She thought was, a job well done, and that's, commendable. So,
and again, I think
let me ask you the question though. Why do we not look at this more as a people business?
Because then we have to treat people like people, right? Because then we got to care a little bit more.
But isn't that what we always want? Treat us like we want to be treated?
Yes. Let's break this down, right?
Okay.
It's that golden rule, right?
Yeah.
So what's the golden rule? We'll tell you what's the golden rule.
Treat others as you would want to be treated.
Yes. However, what if I told you there was a platinum rule?
Okay. Is this Barney Stinson, the platinum rule? Okay, go ahead.
Right, because platinum's better than gold, depending on the market. But like thinking about it, so if the golden rule is treat others the way you want to be treated, meaning I treat you the way that I want to be treated.
Sure.
We are 2 different people.
Right.
So the platinum rule says that treat others the way they want to be treated.
Okay.
My method of communication might look very different than yours. So if I'm going to come at you with my specific way of communicating, and you're like, whoa, I'm not into all this hippy dippy. Like, don't come at me with relationship stuff.
Sure.
No, thank you. Tell me about bottom line and numbers, and that's what I want. I'm an accountant, damn it. I can't come at you interpersonally. I can't come at you with the same regard. So if I want to treat you the way you want to be treated, that means, go with me on this, I should get to know you so that I can treat you the way that you want to be treated.
Oh, I already know this.
Right? Which means I need to be curious about you, which means I need to ask you questions. My buddy James Robillata is a speaker as well, and he's all about the power of curiosity. And we've lost the ability to be curious. And I love I've loved asking people rather than like, tell me more about blah, 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 whatever. I'm always, well, I'm curious. What do you mean when you say this, right? Because I'm curious. So it's
Right.
not about you, right? I'm curious about whatever you are saying. So it's not the like, well, you're wrong. Tell me what you mean by this. It's
Right.
opening the door for, I don't have all the answers. I've never said that I have all the answers. So if we can approach interpersonalism in a way from curiosity or in a way that like, and my buddy James just posted today, like, what if you went into conversations knowing that you might be wrong? Like, how would you listen differently? And I
Yeah.
think that's a great little nugget that I take with me in general of like, I'm not going to have all the answers. I know a lot of stuff about a lot of things. I also don't know a lot about a lot. And so you
You
can't come
you
at it.
know enough to be at the table to have a conversation, but you also know that you don't know enough that you have to continue listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and to come back to the whole supervisor part, right? Like, I was very vulnerable with my boss last week, and I was like, I feel like I'm missing the ball. I feel like I've dropped the ball multiple times. What on what? I'm not sure, but I also feel like I'm missing it. Am I? And I flat out said, like, am I doing what you hired me to do? Because I feel off, and I think that's just a personal feeling, but I want to make sure. And he's reassured me multiple times since then, like, hey, you're doing a good job. You're doing exactly what we wanted. Relationship building, and that's the reason I was hired for the Western region for this job that I have now. Is that like I know a lot of people out west, and I'm pretty good about just creating relationships and conversations. And because I just want, right, like it's not that can we all just get along? Like I'm not asking us to sing kumbaya, but I'm asking us to come to the table and have a good conversation. And that I think is what we've gotten out of the habit of because it's the your line, your line, your line, now my line.
Right. Right. Yeah, Dan, I got to tell you, man. So you just gave a name to something that I've been doing. So I've been a basketball coach now for the last 7 years, and dean of students, athletic director, full time teacher, all these things. And a lot of times in the interviews, I'll sit down and they'll say, "What's your biggest strength?" And I always say that I give people a voice. They'll say, "What's your biggest weakness?" And I'll say that I give people a voice. And a lot of times that's because, and I do approach people with this idea of like, okay, we talk about love languages within relationships and
Mhm.
whatnot. It's like my love language doesn't match your love language. I have to approach you with your love language.
Yeah.
100% get that. So the platinum rule, it trumps it now forever in my mind. You just educated me, and I appreciate that. But
Yes.
with that being said, I think there's still something missing, right? There's this level of leadership that's missing, and you talked about it. It's you need to be curious, and we're not curious. Why aren't we curious? Is why I'm curious about why we're intrinsically not curious about
Mhm.
our employee or the people that we work with, because the only thought that I've ever had with this is that maybe it makes their life more difficult if I know them on a personal level as well to
Mhm.
make business like decisions. But I would say you still can make business like decisions, have business like conversations that matter,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
still have a working relationship and personal relationship with someone.
I think so. I
Why
mean,
why why don't we have that?
we are selfish. We're
Okay.
selfish human beings, right? Like, let's own the fact. And I think we can all say that, like, and I will fully admit, my ex wife will also admit that I am selfish by nature to an extent because we all are. I think the problem is that we've confused some of the selfishness with our lack of empathy or care for others. We've also gotten into the like me, me, me. Everything is me, 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 like blinders on, what's in it for me. And that I would have joked with people the WIIFM, right? That radio station, what's in it for me?
Mm-hmm.
That is what rings true. If you want someone to buy your product, well, what's in it for them? How does it make their life better? That's successful sales, right? It's that whole like Simon Sinek start with why. Why would this make me want to buy or want this product? Um, what's kept us from being more curious with each other, I think, is number one, the lack of empathy and time, but really the lack of ability or lack of conversation skills, right? What people consider soft skills are the
Yeah.
fucking hardest, sorry, are the
No,
hardest
dude, go
skills,
ahead. Yeah.
right?
Go
But
ahead.
like, you call them soft skills, but we know the entire world is run off them. And they are the
Yeah.
hardest ones to quote master. And I don't know many people who have truly mastered those soft skills. Right. So So why do we then demonize a leader or follower or put a title wherever? Why do we demonize them when it's like, hey, so tell me about your day? Like there are times where I'm like, I got work to do, y'all. Like I don't have time for this mushy stuff. Like, and that's me. And I liked some of this stuff. But even then, because it's the like, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. I still have to go because I got to pick up, my daughter for volleyball, for club volleyball, and I got to get my son to theater stuff, right? Like I'm like, I got to do all this because again, it's my life, what I'm doing, where I'm at right now, and so in that zone of selfishness, we very rarely want to make time for others that we don't know. And what I love about the team that I'm currently on right now is that we're all spread out all over the nation. I'm the only one in the mountain or Western time zones. And so they moved staff meeting from 9 a.m. Eastern. Thank God, because that would have been 6 a.m. I would have been physically present, but not able, right, to do anything. But like we start off, and every Tuesday, we probably spend the first 20 minutes of the meeting. Hey, what's going on in your world?
Right.
And most of us have kids. And this is one of the first positions that I felt fully comfortable being like, I got this for my kid. My son's in a commercial. My daughter's doing this. Like, it's one of the first times that a lot of people have children. And I think mine are probably some of the oldest. But like, it's valued that you can, like, you got a kid running in the background. You got a pet that's angry at, a male person, right? Like, life happens, and we bring all of that to work, whether we shield it away from others or not. We
Right.
still bring all of that with us. So why not let your people feel seen and show up fully and authentically them, right? Like, and we worked in education, not at the same place, but we both worked in education. I remember being told, well, you're a director and directors have to wear full suits. Now, keep in mind, this is the South. This is North Carolina in the South where humidity is a thing.
Oh, I
So
know.
like me in a suit, your boy glistens quite regularly. Like I could think about the gym and start sweating. I have gym stuff all over my apartment right now. Have I used it? No. It was a good thought in COVID, but it did not work. And so like I would like full suit and I would walk across campus and be drenched. And I'm like, it looks more unprofessional for me to
Yeah.
be in a full suit, not even ring around the collar. The collar's a different color, right? Not a good look, as opposed to let me dress how I feel comfortable. I will look professional for the day. If I got a meeting with the president, I will dress up and bring a portable fan. I don't know, but like,
Right.
let me bring me. And this is one where like I got tattoos and people are like, oh, you have your tattoo, you should lower your sleeve because of your tattoo. I'm like, it's of my kids' names. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And so it's that level of shield yourself from professionalism. But what the fuck is professionalism anyway? And
Right.
so, right, like I think there's a time and place for who you are. Cool. Why can't I bring some of that to work? I'm not going to be on my team call with everyone dropping F bombs. There's a respect level there because there are families and it's an environment that is not like it's not fostered in my current work environment. That's fine.
Right.
But also like when I'm on a stage, and a majority of my audiences are corporate teams or organizations, but a vast majority are higher education students. And so like, why would I dress up in a suit and tie? And I used to feel this the first couple times, like, let me dress up in a shirt and tie so they take me seriously. No. Like, let me show up as me. Let me
Right.
show up in my like polo and jeans and nice shoes so that I still look presentable. But like, that's me, and that's going to help me show up as me. I think effective work environments allow you to show up as yourself because then that already takes down part of the wall that we put up coming into work in the first place.
No, that's huge. It's absolutely huge, and it's giving people that empowerment to be themselves, their natural, true selves.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can tap into that, you're going to get a better work environment, and I ultimately think you're going to get a better product or a better school or a better whatever environment on the other side. I want to kind of talk about something that we mentioned a little bit. It was this idea of, um, you know, you wanted to be better. So you ask questions of your boss, like, am I doing what is asked of me? I do think intrinsically a lot of people don't focus on self-improvement the way that, or self-growth the way that we would like them to, right? If every single person did that, there would be a level of trust amongst each other. You wouldn't have to have tough conversations as much because people would constantly be in this, like, this self-awareness of like, oh, I need to make sure that I'm doing better. With
Yeah.
that being said, I do think, and I've witnessed a couple bosses now, truly probably the biggest con job that I've seen
Mhm.
was someone presented themselves as all the things that you would want to hear. I'm here to listen. We need to build a team.
Mhm.
You have a voice, things of that nature. But what I learned as we went was that, and I don't know how familiar you are with the growth mindset model about
Mhm.
like trying to
Oh, yeah.
reach an executive state of mind. But
Mhm.
like I got to a place where I grabbed onto this model and I was like, you know what? I do find myself to be emotional and I'm an empathetic guy and I wear it on my sleeve. So like I really wanted to harness those emotions
Yeah.
and kind of control them as best as I could. But then I realized that the person that was kind of mentoring me in that situation had lost all emotion
Ooh.
and became so data driven, so analytical
Yep.
that they were so cold now to human beings. And they forgot that really where the space is that place in between emotional and
Mhm.
executive is where you probably should live. And I'm
Yeah.
so glad that I had the experience that I did, no matter how ugly it was, because it led me to that conclusion.
Yeah.
But this gentleman's 60 years of age and still never figured that out. Why?
Mhm.
What's your thoughts on becoming too self-improved that you kind of can't see the trees through the forest anymore?
For sure. Well, and so keep in mind that my current environment is I live in Los Angeles, which is like the land of self-improve. The number of self-help books that I have in a stack here and a stack. Ask me how many I've read. Not many, but I own a lot of them.
Ah,
Because
but that's what LA does though, right? So like how much of the genuine self improvement is there
yeah,
versus
I'm
like
like
the I need to
I'm
look.
very curious about some of them, but reading does not ignite me the
Yeah,
way that it once did. But and I think some of it when we think about self-help, I do think that there's has almost become almost like a toxicity to it. And I see it a lot, especially with like life coaches and some of that where it's like just be positive and think good thought. Like this whole toxic positivity stuff, like that doesn't work. Excuse me, it doesn't work for everyone, right? Just like meditation doesn't work for everyone. I try. I can't calm this down quite enough to get in my like zen. I also have taken some different meditation classes, just different ones, because my first one turned me off for quite some time. Quick
sure.
story. My first meditation class was on Zoom. So already there's that. I had my kids. My son's at the kitchen table playing Legos, which is not a quiet activity if you're like building and rebuilding and crashing stuff around. My daughter, I think, was on FaceTime in the other room with her friends, also not necessarily a quiet activity. And so here I am, like trying to trying to meditate. But the woman, and so there's like three of us in this Zoom room, and she is a licensed practitioner that I was referred to by my own therapist, or like the I was a referral to the system, and she was put in me or whatever. So I'm in there, and she's like, "Okay, close your eyes and find your inner sunset." And I'm like, "My inner sunset?" Because I can look and see an external sunset, which is quite nice. Because my inner voice is as snarky as my outer voice. So I'm like, okay, find it. And then she gets so close to the microphone and
Oh
goes,
yeah.
peace. And then rings a damn gong. And so it's like, peace. Boom. And if you want to shake me out of a meditative state of sunshine or sunsets, like that's going to do it real quick.
Yeah.
And, and after 20 minutes of this, as someone who's like, hi, this is my first time, 20 minutes, I want you to fathom more than 5 minutes of silence with a woman banging a gong singing peace and see how well that works. And one of the women had like a full blown experience. She had a break. She was crying. She was like, I just realized part of my childhood. I'm like, I am doing something wrong here. But she had been coming for multiple times. So
Sure.
this was like, I think I was accidentally put in an advanced class. I don't know. But in those moments, I realized that's not for me.
Right.
I then later realized that type is not for me. So my meditation that I don't really do on a regular basis is that I will before bed look at my daily wins. I'll make a list in my phone. What wins did I have today? I did a great podcast with you. I was able to take my son his tap dance class or his tap shoes at school because he forgot them, right? Like I'm able to do some of that. Those are good wins for me. I used to go to bed feeling really shitty about the next day because I felt unaccomplished. I felt busy but not productive. And so when I started to flip the script, like, is that just be positive? No, that's acknowledging my wins in a different mental meditative state
Sure.
than others. And I think so often I would hear from other people that's like, well, it's just your aura and you need to fix your vibe. And I finally realized that's like when they say vibe, it's vibrations, like your vibrations are off. I'm like, I don't, I, sorry, like I don't know what you mean. It's like, well, if you just need to increase your level of vibration to understand it. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like and so all these gurus are talking at a 30,000-foot view, and I'm gonna need you like at my 6'2" stature to help walk me through this at a basic of basic levels. And so too often, to come to that part of growth mindset, we're like, well, it's just this, like why don't you understand this, when we haven't given them the skills to build the foundation from there. And that comes back to relationships, curiosity, asking questions, feeling invested in the work that you do to bring meaning to the work that you do versus just doing the rote work that's always expected of you. That level of can you build a stronger foundation on whatever it's built on is incredibly important. So like, yeah, I live in LA, the land of hippy dippy stuff. But like, will I participate in a drum circle? Maybe. I don't know. Is it my thing right now? But if a friend was like, let's go, I'd probably go. But like knowing that there are types, right? My way to do something is a way, it's not the way. And I
Yeah.
think if we as supervisors, leaders, followers, employees, whatever, humans were to approach it of like, oh, that's an interesting way to do a podcast. I don't agree with the way Bobby does it. Okay, well, that's a way to do a podcast. It's
Hmm.
not the standardized way.
Right.
And I think that's where we could approach things with more curiosity of like, well, what would I do? I know that I don't want to host a podcast, but what would I do if I did? Cool. I like it conversational rather than like, here's your 6 questions.
Yeah.
Me, because that's what I like. Doesn't mean that's what everyone likes.
What do you think we can do then? Well, I have the answer, I guess. I didn't want to just ask you a question, but like, so one of the things I did, I actually specifically taught a leadership class.
Mhm.
And the idea was spending a lot of time on social emotional learning, spending a lot of
Mm.
time on soft skills, basically, working on these intangibles that make up a good leader. My
Yeah.
very first unit, to go back to the word intangible, is to sit down and I want you to think about the people in your life that you consider to be, role models, leaders, and not just because they have, the ranking of mom and dad, because not all moms and dads are good leaders or good role models. Think about the people in your life that you genuinely look up to, that you think hold that type of, admiration for them, and
Mhm.
dissect the intangibles that they have that make them a good leader. When we did this, I did this with juniors and seniors the last couple of years. When we did that, it's astonishing when you come up with a list. I say come up with a list of 10, and then you have all these kids together and they write down their list, and now you got all these different things, but there's some commonalities, right?
Yeah.
And when you have empathy and you have good communication skills, and um, golden rule was one, but now we're going to change it to the platinum rule. When you have these types of intangibles, and you look at them in through a magnifying glass, when you look at the leaders at the political level,
Mm.
they don't match. And
Mhm.
I know they do. I know, again, it's depending on who the audience is.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the times, it's like maybe they have 3 out of the 10, or maybe they have, 5 out of the 10, but they're not, you're never gonna have 10 out of the 10. But like, it's the idea of like, is anybody even breaking down their own intangibles, dissecting themselves and asking,
Yep.
okay, if this is what I look for out of a leader, am I
Mhm.
encompassing these types of intangibles in my life? Because if you
Yeah.
can do it on a you level, and everybody does that, then it will take care of itself. But that doesn't seem to be happening either. Why do you think that is?
Right, like, um, I don't know if you ever watched The West Wing. It's one of my
I
favorite
watched like the first 10 episodes. Yeah.
shows. Yeah, it's one of my absolute favorite shows. Aaron Sorkin, I think, is a genius when it comes to some of that writing. I say that because there was one episode in particular. It's part of a presidential race that's happening, and there was like a religious test, right? Like one of the candidates lost his faith, so to speak, because he lost his wife, and so he was having a crisis of faith. And so people kept asking him, and they were like, well, why aren't you going to church? And why aren't you doing this? And the bishop has said that he's happy to give you communion. And then the other one said that they're not going to give you communion. And there was all this back and forth. And he turns around and in a heat of just like authenticity says that if you are asking for someone to agree exactly, if you're asking a politician specifically to agree exactly with you, then you are asking to get lied to. And I think that's what we're almost expecting of our politicians, is that we're expecting them to agree with us on every single aspect of what I, Dan, what you, Bobby, like want or see as this is what it is. We've set them up for failure as politicians, as humans, because then we expect that they've never changed their mind. I
Right.
love politicians who flip-flop. And not back and forth of like, let me now go for the big voters and now that I'm after this. It's the ones who after 5 years are like, wow, there's some studies that came out. I was wrong. The fact
Yeah.
that Bill Clinton says that the
Don't ask, don't tell.
crime bill, no, the crime bill, right? I think it was the crime bill of whatever. God, I forget the years at this point, 98 maybe.
Okay.
He was like, that was a bad bill. Like it was the 3 strikes bill.
Oh, yeah.
He was like, in the time, it made sense. Why? Because diversity was a thing, but it wasn't a thing in terms of representation. So like it made sense at the time for them. He has since said that that's one of his biggest mistakes of his presidential career. That's massive. Now, he could never have gotten away with that while running for reelection.
Right.
Because you have to placate. You have to take the generalities, right? Like I hate the politicians who make it through their initial run and then they are the main, candidate ticket, or excuse me, the main endorsement for that party, and then all of a sudden they're one stance that got them there. It's like, well, now it's more of a this. I'm like, no, say it if you mean it. Don't say it if you don't mean it.
Right.
And that's where we've set them up for failure because we've expected a cut and dry approach to politicians and aren't allowing them to be human. Now,
I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because 2 years ago when my first season of this, I sat down and I said, I did a three episode deal where I had a panel of independents on. This is during the election. Had a panel of independents on, a panel of Democrats, and a panel of Republicans, and I just kind of wanted to get to know them instead of them all being together where it would get ugly. I would rather let's just talk. Let's just hear each other out here. And some of the things that I came across during that time is this idea that I'm kind of losing my train of thought here, but it'll get to me. Give me a second here.
Yeah, no, you're
That's
good.
why I love it's podcast and not live radio. What you just mentioned? You were just mentioning at the end there. You were just talking about.
Well, there's an authenticity that we expect.
Oh no, I got it. Sorry. The whole idea is that I changed in the sense of like, you know what? I am no longer looking at our leaders the same way. It used to be, I thought it was top down, right? I blame the American people for the way our government is. I blame the American people for the way our media is. We don't expect better. And until we do, when we keep falling trap to, supporting blindly the captain of a team, no matter which party it is, without, because we're looking for affirmation rather than information, it's on us now. So I'm so glad that you said that because I do think, I used to ask this question. I would say, do you think there's more good cops or bad cops? And I would get people that would say there's more good cops than there are bad. And then I would say, okay, with that same type of rational thought, do you think there's more good politicians or bad politicians? And they always give me the opposite answer. And to me, that didn't make any sense because they would say, oh, well, power corrupts. Well, police officers have power too. So why is one okay for the other and not for not for the other. So I don't
Because
know.
again, we internally rationalize this. You already said it, right? Like, because in our minds we have made it up, right? We don't have the rubber band mindset, right? That growth mindset of like, can you stretch yourself to understand that this is the same concept of power, police, politician, right? But yet your rationalization from either personal lived experiences, maybe that's different. From whether what you've seen or heard, that's always different depending on the people. But again, the breakdown that happens, and I'm glad you brought that up about your show, the breakdown that happens is our inability to freaking listen to one another with actual open ears, as opposed, like, we've approached life as actors. My line, your line, your line. This is how I'm supposed to react, but this is what I'm really thinking that nobody can hear, right? We've approached it from that regard, where some of the funniest movies are improv. The best outtakes are all mess ups and mistakes, right? Like, and I used to do a keynote where I talked about like the PR issue of organizations, and it's this like, how many of us have watched animated outtakes? Right? Like, they've animated outtakes in Monsters Inc. and like all these different movies. They are animated, which means someone drew them as outtakes.
Right.
That was a staged outtake for you. So like, it's all made up. So if we can acknowledge that some of the stuff has just been delivered, but I think that some of the funniest outtakes are where you can see people break character. Think about SNL, right? Saturday Night Live. The funniest sketches that some of us remember growing up, regardless of season, because I got my
Right.
opinions of which ones were good, but like, were the ones where people broke character.
Right.
Because again, that shows us that they are human, that they can laugh, and that like, yes, it's funny in that moment. And that level of authenticity is what I think we've kind of gotten rid of, because we're so used to comparing what's, like, it's that whole comparison is the thief of joy.
Right.
I'm comparing my current situation, my current life, to everyone else's highlight reel on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, on whatever. And I'm comparing that and saying like, I don't have a good life, but I do have a good life. I'm just comparing myself maybe to the wrong people. And the mute feature has been heavenly as an addition to Facebook and Instagram. But looking at it from the sense of, again, who defines success? And can I authentically answer that and vulnerably answer that? And that's what I think a lot of both politicians feel like they can't be authentic or vulnerable. Leaders feel like they can't be authentic or vulnerable. And that is the foundation of building a good relationship. Any relationship, work relationship, romantic relationship, podcastee relationship, is an ability to break down and be who we are and show up as who we are.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. And I feel like, I love these podcasts because I feel like I always learn the name of the thing I've been doing. It's like, oh, I have been doing that.
Mhm.
It's good to know that. With the same vein of what we're talking about, though, when you talk about authenticity or you talk about self-improvement, whatever it is, at
Mhm.
any level, if it's just, the low man on the totem pole all the way up, there's this sense of awareness that
Yeah.
has to be able to take place. So I'm going to ask you this question. How much of the population of people are even capable of self-awareness to a point, because I'm equating this to
Mhm.
intelligence, but maybe I shouldn't do it intelligence. Maybe it's just, I talked about that growth mindset model. How many
Yeah.
people are even capable of achieving executive with their IQ, with what they've been given, whatever they were born into? Because I do think some of that plays like, to just come out and say everybody can achieve executive state of mind, I also think is not um, a fair
Yes and
view
no.
of our people, because I think our people are all over the spectrum when it comes to levels of comprehension and
Yeah.
capabilities.
I think everyone has the potential. It's whether we have the opportunities, right? Right. So I mean, we can explore the whole paradigm of social justice when it comes to privilege. And so, like, can someone who's never been afforded the opportunity for a good education have a growth mindset the same as someone who went to a private school all their life and has been given opportunities for that, or the books for that. And so right, like there's that. There's a family environment. Are you always shut down at home from your parents, from your guardians, if assuming you have either? Do you, like, is housing insecurity? There are some people who can't get to a growth mindset because they're either not afforded the chance because they are in like base level Maslow trying to get that food, shelter, security. And
Right.
that security piece is something that is missed across the board. Teams, organizations, relationships, security. And when I say that, I mean safety.
Safety. Yeah.
Do you feel physically and psychologically safe to be open and vulnerable? Because that's going to get you to the growth mindset. That's going to get you there. But if I don't feel like, if I can't bring up that I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, then I'm going to bottle that up and it's going to fester. And then I'm going to blow up when my boss is like, well, why didn't you do it this way? What do you mean I didn't do it this way? And so it just festers in that negative regard. So you have to feel safe. And so companies that don't feel safe or don't want to take risks aren't going to grow in that mindset approach of, well, let's try something new. Because if I've got a new system that I think could really improve a lot, but if I think I'm going to get fired if I bring it up, I'm never going to bring it up, which means the company. So being able to feel safe, like I'm not going to get beat up if I'm vulnerable with you. You can't reach through this and beat me up for me being myself and vulnerable, right? But if you and I were having this conversation and you started to square off about this growth mindset, bro, then like I might be like, okay, all right, yeah, sure, growth mindset. And I would shut down. I don't like confrontation. I can cause confrontation. I'm decent at dealing with it in the moment. I still don't like confrontation, but that's also a part of life. And so for those of us who can get to a place where growth mindset is possible, I do think everyone is capable of some facet of it, but it's a comfortability with it too. So let me do a quick example for you. So like cross your arms, like you don't want to be in the room, like, right? Like, which is what most people are anyway. So you got it. All right, now take note of where the arms are. Which arm's on top, which arm's on bottom, right? You got it? Mm-hmm. All right, now shake out. And now cross them the other way.
I can't.
Right?
I'm not even sure how.
Right? You've never questioned right and left so much in your life in that moment.
You're right. I got it now. Yeah.
Right? How's it feel?
Awkward.
Right? Feels a little awkward. Feels a little weird.
Yeah.
But that's also what growth mindset is.
Yeah.
That's what doing something different is. This is a pattern. Getting in a comfortable pattern, that's all that is. But if you were to practice it differently, that's going to feel a little bit more comfortable after time. So like the patterns that we have and the privilege that we have to stay in our comfortable pattern or be challenged in the pattern is what's going to allow us to grow in ways that we never anticipated, whether that's individual, group, team, organization, whatever.
But don't you find though that more people are just not willing to step outside of that comfort zone? You know, in the reasons, you know, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I just feel like, you know, I think the reasons these emotional or not emotional, but like, yeah, you could use the word emotional, but like inspirational quotes, you know, work or videos work or passionate people work is because, you know, the people watching them are at the masses of not doing that. You see what I'm saying? So yeah. Why? What can we do? How do you solve this to get us all to a place where I mean, I know the opportunities, you know, you have no control of when you're young and even when you're older, but it's like, I tell my juniors and seniors, I'm like, look, because we definitely talk about privilege because it exists, right? Even if you deny it or not, it exists. But I would tell them, I'm like, look, you were given a bad hand. Now you have to acknowledge it. And unfortunately, you have to work harder. But now that you've acknowledged it and you know that you were given a bad hand, if you don't work harder, that's now on you.
Yeah. I would, right? Like I check off a hell of a lot of privilege boxes. I am a straight white male and like 50% of marriages, mine ended in divorce, right? So like I am on par as an average but privileged white male. And I'm tall, so I also check that box, right? So like
Screw you.
I have, sorry. That wasn't shade. It wasn't meant as shade, but it just kind of, right. But there's that part. And so looking at it, like I can acknowledge those areas of privilege and still work to not only unpack my own privilege, but to give voice and assistance to others. That took a long time to really get to. I mean, I was the better part of mid late 30s to where I finally was like, hmm, what if I'm the problem? Right? Where it's the like, maybe I
Okay.
should change. And really part of that too comes from, for me, especially where I've stepped into my own self, happened because of the pandemic.
Yep.
Look, Bobby, when you're a public speaker and all of a sudden you don't have a public anymore because everything's shut down, you question life. Like I was curled up fetal position on this couch for the better part of 2020
Yeah.
and struggled to make ends meet, to pay child support, to live, to buy groceries. Like I struggled. I still am in a place of more privilege than most. But I also knew in December of 2020, December, I think almost like, I think it's 6th or 7th of 2020, I had my ass kicked by a friend. And he was like, "You're going to do this online program." And I was like, "Cool story. No, I'm not." And he sent me, he was like, "VIP is $160. Here's 100. You have no excuses." And I was like, "But my bank account says 20." So I'm like, "That's an excuse." But I went on a limb and I was like, "What do I have to lose?"
Right.
At this point, my apartment, but most everybody in LA was losing their apartment anyway. So like par for the course. Again, that's a safety of, if I had to sleep on my ex-wife's couch, I knew that was an option.
Right.
That's the safety. That was a physical and psychological safety piece that I had, didn't want, but I knew I could acknowledge. And
Right.
so being able to, I think, grow, or being faced with the precipice of, I can stay on this couch and stay the same, or I can finally figure out ways to address what I'm feeling, but then also show up better and how I used to, or how I think I see myself. Right. And because there's
Yeah.
the like how you see me, how viewers are going to see me, but then how I feel like I show up. And I jokingly tell people that I'm the same this way as I am on stage. It's going to feel like a conversation because I don't want you to feel talked at. I want
Right.
us to feel like we're having a good combo, because
Yeah.
that's what matters. And so I think finding ways to acknowledge whatever you need to unpack. And I went to therapy weekly. Boy, I'm still in therapy. Like, let's be honest, because I want to be, not because I have to be,
Right.
because that's where I can get challenged and grow a little bit more, because I'm asked the harder questions. If we're not asked the harder questions, we become complacent, we become comfortable. Maybe this job's not right for you. Well, what's the job that you might want? That's scary. I left a full-time job with dope benefits to go in employment for myself, and then 2 years later, a pandemic hit.
Yeah.
Bro, timing is not my strong suit. Okay. But knowing that I still am, I loved what I do, and I'm working my way through all the debt that I built from the pandemic, but it's work. I like the work though.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like the work that they do, because number one, working on ourselves sucks. But we got to acknowledge that we don't have it all together, and then we can move forward.
Totally agree, man. Totally agree. That in a nutshell was like my curriculum for leadership. You know what I mean? I definitely appreciate your insights on all those things today. Couple things before we roll, because we're an hour in already. It's funny how
God, we are. All right.
we
Does
talked
not feel
about
like
what
it.
we wanted it to be. I wanted to talk about imposter syndrome. I think what I'll do is I'm going to shelve that, and I'm going to have you on again in the future, and we'll really dive into that, because I have a lot of friends that they crumble to that thought. I have it daily. I've left my education world. I'm an entrepreneur
Mhm.
now, and every day I feel like I'm playing entrepreneur, and saying the same thought of like, oh man, I was very busy today because I made myself busy, but I was not productive. I got nothing done, and I made no money. Um,
Yep.
so that's a whole thing. Let's shelf that. We'll come back to that on
Totally,
another
man.
episode if you wouldn't mind.
Happy to. Happy to.
The last few minutes here, with just the elections around the corner, with the midterm elections around the corner,
Mhm.
all across the country. Um, in your particular case, I want to talk about Gavin Newsom, because
Okay.
I think, and this is just my opinion, but I do think he's going to end up getting the Democratic Party nomination over
Well,
Biden.
mhm.
Um, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because there were a lot of Democrats that left LA like the Joe Rogans of the world, and a lot of people that felt like, Gavin Newsom, because I have friends that moved back home to Michigan that lived out there because they felt like, these are hardcore liberals who felt like at their freedoms were being infringed upon, like they couldn't do anything and they had enough of it. I'm not trying to get into the political realm, just as a leadership, the intangibles of the man. How do you feel Gavin Newsom has done for your California state?
I will turn this into a generality type of a statement. But it is the way that I feel about your question about Gavin Newsom. I think he has done the best he could with what he had, with the information given at the time. And as human beings, for fuck's sake, that's what we should strive for, to do the best
all you can do. That's all you can do.
At the time, with the information provided. And you got to be good with that. I think, can we look back and be like, oh, well, maybe this wasn't like, and again, I lived in LA, one of the strictest lockdowns in the country. And like, that sucked. But at the same time, like, I approached it from, this is a public health piece, not a, like, I want to be able to go. Like, did I want to go? Yeah. Is it safer for me to stay home? Yeah. Am I still curled up in fetal position and caught up on Netflix? Also, yeah. But like, the job that he did, I think he did the best he could with the information, and with a state that, while California is very blue, we are a very divided state.
Sure.
Like, we are very red, very blue, and some purples.
A lot of people don't realize that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, really, California in terms of San Francisco and LA, like, that's blue. That's the two parts. And by the way, for those that aren't geographically knowledgeable about California, they are not close to each other in the state. No. It's my favorite friends that are in town. I'm in San Francisco. Come say hey. No, bro, that's an 8-hour drive minimum. That's with no traffic. It's an 8-hour drive. And so, like, knowing that those two populations, but then a lot of red exists in the Central Valley. A lot of red exists here in LA. And so I think knowing that he had a state of farmers that had to work, knowing that he had a state of business people who had to shut down, that Silicon Valley had to close, right? There are so many facets that I think he did as best as he could. And I give him props for it, like, did he make mistakes? Yeah. He's fucking human. We all do. Like, give everyone a little bit more grace.
Yeah.
Not excuse their behavior, but maybe a little bit more grace.
Yeah, it's something that that in my world of education, I told the students, I was like, how many times have we said, here's a list of consequences, and how many times have we shown mercy? And I think that's crucial to do, even with your leaders. Now, how many times do they get to repeat the same mistakes? That's a different question altogether. And then you got to start holding people accountable. But I'm with you. I just was curious what your thought being, that you are from California, you live there. And I do feel that way. Gavin Newsom's going to end up being if you're left leaning or if you're a Democrat, I do think he's going to end up getting that ticket. I could be wrong. But we'll see what ends up happening. So,
and that's where, like, I'm happy to make that decision once it all happens. But midterms wise, for those that are listening during midterm season, or if you happen to be listening to this in 2 years during the election season, again, read everything yourself. I got a friend of mine who's deep into the NFTs and Web3, and his whole thing is do your own damn research.
Yeah.
I will read all of the freaking packets of information and make the best decision that's for me and my family. But also I will look at it as a common good. Will I vote for something that might raise my taxes if it helps someone less fortunate or less privileged than me? Yes, because that is a privilege that I have and I'm okay with.
Right.
Do I want to give 50% of my income away in taxes? Preferably not. But where, like, again,
where is it going? Who's it helping? That's something that was discussed on that. It was the non-negotiables. We all have our non-negotiables, and it seems like right now abortion is going to be a big one in a lot of these states that is a non-negotiable for people. So, you got a lot of politicians who, and I do think it's good that they have at least come out and said, this is what I believe in. It's okay that they're on one side or the other, and this is what I believe in. It might change. And I think a lot of times people, like you talked about with Bill Clinton, a lot of times people, think that this is the way I am and it's the way I have to be forever. And it's like, no, it's okay for us to say that the don't ask, don't tell policy of, the mid 90s it was not the best thing. It was the best thing at the time, and everybody, thought that was an overwhelmingly successful
Yeah.
program. Now we can look back and be like, wow, that was such a hindrance and ugly thing. But
Yeah.
at the time, you don't know that. So,
Mhm.
Dan, man, I'm going to give you a minute here to say what you want to say, plug anything you got to plug.
Yeah.
Just where can people find you? I thought this
Mhm.
was a great conversation, and we were only going to go for 30 minutes. We went for twice as long. So,
Yeah, no, this was good. Thank you. And the name is Dan Faill. It turns out not that many exist in the world. So all of the general social media is at Dan Faill. That's Faill, two L's, because I'll go twice as hard in failure. So the website's danfaill.com, Twitter, Dan Faill, Instagram, Dan Faill, LinkedIn, Dan Faill, all the things. Happy to work with teams, organizations, human beings, just to, number one, create conversations that matter. But like you alluded to, like I've really started to lean into my last name and look at failure as the pinnacle to success. And I also want to flip the script so that we can acknowledge that everyone has imposter syndrome at some point in their life. And how do we actually address it and overcome it?
well said, man. Well said. For those of you that were listening, made it to the end, we appreciate you. If you're new, subscribe, follow, do the whole thing. You can do that with Dan's Instagram and his socials, as well as mine. Go to YouTube, hit that follow button. Always, always, if you're a leader, if you're listening to this, please, at the very least, treat your humans the way, well, the way they deserve to be treated. And just remember that it's your job to have the tough conversations that matter. So be sure to have them. For the rest of us, be human. See you down the road.
Thanks.